A young girl went with her mother to a small stadium to watch a match. While the adults were seated in the stands, she went off to play with other children just a few dozen meters away from her mother. The woman kept an eye on her from the stands, but when she turned away for just a few seconds, her daughter was nowhere to be found. The police quickly got involved, and within the first few days of the investigation, they uncovered several disturbing facts. Despite their efforts, the girl's fate remained unknown for nearly 30 years. Only a few weeks ago did the police unexpectedly solve the mystery. Friends, Halloween is just around the corner, a time when the mystical and eerie atmosphere blends seamlessly with spectacular events, unique costumes, and spooky decorations. It's the perfect opportunity to go out and enjoy the festivities, especially since you won't have to look far for events and company. All of this can be found in Cover. Cover is a unique app for discovering events and meeting people. In honor of Halloween, they've curated a list of the most exciting and thrilling events in major cities to help you fully immerse yourself in the spooky season. For example, you can attend an immersive theater show or the Scariest Halloween Festival, both of which perfectly capture the essence of this fall celebration. If you're unsure who to go with, Cover has solved that problem for you. Under each event, you can easily find a group of people who share your interests. Just choose the people you'd like to attend the event with and get ready for new experiences together. Halloween-themed events are already in full swing, so don't waste any time. Download Cover using the link in the description or the QR code on the screen and dive into the Halloween fun. Megan Nick was born on September 12, 1989, in the small town of Ozark, Arkansas. Soon after her birth, her parents had a son, followed by another daughter a year later. Megan got along well with her siblings, and they loved playing together for hours. The younger children often looked up to her. When she was just learning to read, Megan would practice by reading children's books to her younger brother before bed. She also loved animals, and despite her young age, she told her parents that she wanted to become a veterinarian when she grew up. In addition to her love for animals, Megan joined the Girl Scouts in elementary school, where she enjoyed crafting and outdoor activities with her fellow scouts. However, when she was 6, her parents decided to get a divorce. Despite the separation, the children continued to spend plenty of time with their father. In the early summer of 1995, a family friend invited Morgan's mother to a baseball game in a nearby town called Alma. At first, Morgan's mom thought about declining the invitation. It was a Friday evening, and she would have to drive nearly 45 kilometers to the stadium. However, she eventually decided to accept and take Morgan along, thinking that her daughter might enjoy the outing and they could have a nice evening together. On the evening of June 9th, Morgan's mother left her younger children with their grandmother and drove to the stadium. Although it was relatively small, about 300 people showed up for the game, mostly parents and friends of the players. She found her friends, and they sat down to watch the game. It didn't take long for Morgan to grow bored with the game, and soon she noticed 2 familiar kids. They invited her to play with them near the stadium and catch fireflies. At first, Morgan's mother was hesitant to let her go. It was already dark outside, and this was their first time visiting the town, so she was worried that something might happen to her daughter. However, her friends reassured her that their children often played near the stadium, and there was nothing to worry about. Eventually, she relented, and Morgan ran off to play with the other kids. They stayed close to a small hill within sight of the stadium, and Morgan's mother kept glancing over to check on her daughter. About 15 minutes later, the baseball game ended, and the players started making their way toward the stands to meet their parents. Morgan's mom looked away for just a few seconds. When she turned back to where her daughter had been playing, Morgan was gone. 2 children who had been walking with Morgan were heading towards the bleachers to meet their parents, but Morgan wasn't with them. The worried mother approached the children and asked where her daughter was. They explained that before returning to the stadium, they had stopped to shake the sand out of their shoes that had collected during their game. They had gone to a car in the parking lot to do so, holding on to the vehicle for balance. Morgan had been standing near the back of the car while they emptied their shoes. Once they finished, they headed back toward the stadium, but Morgan was nowhere to be seen. The children assumed Morgan had decided to wait by her mother's car and didn't think to wait for her. Morgan's mom glanced towards the parking lot, hoping to spot her daughter near their car, but there was no sign of her. She hurried over, checked inside the car, but Morgan was gone. Panic set in, and the mother returned to the children, hoping they might have more information about her daughter's disappearance. She questioned them, but they had no idea where Morgan could have gone. However, they mentioned that while they were playing, they saw a man near the parking lot. The man had been standing by a red pickup truck, looking toward the stadium, occasionally glancing in their direction. At one point, the man even approached them and said something, but the children couldn't remember what exactly. They did recall that he had a rural-sounding accent. Thinking this man might be connected to her daughter's disappearance, Morgan's mom immediately contacted the police. Within 6 minutes, officers arrived at the stadium and spoke to the children who had last seen Morgan. From their conversation, the police gathered more details about the man who had been standing near the parking lot. Based on their accounts, the suspect was described as a white male between 23 and 30 years old, around 5'11" in height, of average build, with a short beard, mustache, and dark hair. Several children also clearly remembered his truck. It was an old red pickup with Arkansas plates, and in the back, it had a white bed cover. This detail struck the police as suspicious because a cover like that could easily hide an adult, let alone a child. Another odd thing was that the cover seemed too short for the pickup model, like it didn't really fit, which only deepened the investigators' suspicions. They began to suspect that this man might be directly involved in Morgan's disappearance, possibly using the truck bed for kidnapping purposes. The children also mentioned that the man was only wearing jeans with no shirt or jacket on, which was unusual for the evening. Officers immediately searched the parking lot but couldn't find any vehicle matching the children's description. After speaking with the kids, they began questioning the remaining crowd, but none of the 300 or so people who stayed for the game remembered seeing anything out of the ordinary that night. Searches around the stadium also came up empty, and the officers moved their efforts to the surrounding streets, but despite working through the night, no trace of Morgan was found. Her mother was beside herself with grief and shock. She refused to go home and ended up staying at the fire station until morning. The next day, the search resumed with renewed intensity. News of Morgan's disappearance spread quickly through the county, and dozens of volunteers came forward to help. Soon, the FBI and state police also joined the case. Helicopters were deployed to search from the air, and investigators put together a sketch of the potential suspect based on the friends' descriptions of the man. The sketch, along with photos of Morgan, was distributed throughout the town and nearby areas, hoping someone might recognize the man. At the start of the investigation, officers believed Morgan had just wandered off and might be lost nearby, but as nearly 24 hours had passed without any sign of her, it became clear this wasn't the case. If she were just lost, they would have found her by then. By the following evening, the police began receiving more disturbing reports from parents. One woman came forward, saying that just hours before the baseball game, a man had tried to lure her 4-year-old daughter into his red pickup truck. This incident had occurred near a laundromat in the neighboring town, where the woman had been inside doing laundry while her daughter played outside. The mother immediately rushed out, and the man quickly drove away. She provided investigators with a description of the man, which matched the sketch of Morgan's possible abductor. The day after Morgan's disappearance, a witness from Fort Smith, a town not far from Alma, came forward. He reported seeing a man trying to lure a 9-year-old girl into a public restroom. Fortunately, the girl managed to escape. Once again, the description of the man matched the composite sketch made from the accounts of Morgan's friends. This led police to believe that the same person who tried to kidnap other children may be responsible for Morgan's disappearance, possibly indicating a history of similar crimes. The police focused their efforts on locating the red pickup truck described by the witnesses. They also began looking into previously convicted offenders in nearby towns. Over the next few weeks, investigators received hundreds of tips about possible suspects, but each lead either couldn't be verified or was ruled out entirely, as the individuals were proven to have no connection to the crime. Meanwhile, officers continued combing the area around the stadium, gathering various items that could potentially be evidence. They collected cigarette butts, bottles, and other debris, all of which were sent to the lab for DNA analysis. Unfortunately, none of these items provided any meaningful clues to Morgan's disappearance. Regarding the red pickup truck, the police department received nearly 250 calls from witnesses across different towns and even neighboring states who had seen similar vehicles. The problem was that many people in the state drove trucks matching the description, making it difficult to pinpoint the right one. Investigators attempted to check every owner, but once again, they found no solid evidence linking anyone to the crime. This went on for 2 weeks until police received an unexpected call. A resident of a town called Stuttgart, about 3 hours from Alma, noticed a man trying to break into his car. The homeowner approached, and the man immediately ran away. However, the witness saw that the man was holding the hand of a small girl. Police showed the witness a sketch of the suspect, and he confirmed that the man trying to break into his car looked very similar to the suspect they were searching for, and the girl resembled Morgan. Investigators quickly launched a large-scale operation in Stuttgart, cordoning off an area of about 10 square kilometers and sending in dozens of officers. Morgan's parents also rushed to the town, hoping for the safe recovery of their daughter. Several hundred volunteers joined the police in sweeping the town and the surrounding area. Helicopters scanned the area from above, while search dogs tried to pick up the girl's scent from her belongings. The search lasted for 16 hours, but they were still unable to find Morgan. The police began to question the credibility of the witnesses' statements. They conducted 2 polygraph tests, and both times the operator concluded that he was lying. Still, the man insisted his story was true, but in the end, he finally admitted that he had made the whole thing up. In reality, he had seen someone trying to break into his car, but he couldn't make out the person's face, and there was no little girl with them. As a result, the man was arrested for providing false testimony, which led to the loss of nearly 24 hours and thousands of dollars from the department's budget. It's unclear whether he faced any punishment, but typically, such actions result in either a hefty fine or a short jail sentence. With the false lead out of the way, investigators found themselves back at square one. However, no one intended to give up. An additional 17 officers from across the state were brought in to assist, and the investigators focused on sorting through the incoming tips. By that point, they had received over 1,500 tips, but none of them brought the police any closer to finding Morgan. Her parents also refused to stop looking for their daughter, though with each passing month, their hope of finding her alive began to fade. About a year after the girl's disappearance, her mother founded a non-profit organization aimed at helping to locate missing children. While she remained committed to finding Morgan, by then, there were no leads left to follow. So she began dedicating her time to helping other families facing similar tragedies. The mother also focused on educating parents and children about the dangers they might face at any moment in their lives. Over the next several years, the police continued to investigate various leads and interview potential suspects, but none of these efforts yielded results. In 2021, 6 years after Morgan's disappearance, the FBI released an age-progressed composite image of her. That same year, several popular television shows covered the case, leading to an increase in tips. Most of these led investigators nowhere, but one in particular caught their attention. The caller claimed that the girl's body was buried on the property of a house in Boonville, a town about an hour away from Alma. The police were intrigued by the tip because the caller provided very specific details about the case. even though not all information had been made public. In early 22, they obtained a warrant to search the property. They brought search dogs and dug up the entire site, but found no trace of Morgan. After that, the case went cold for nearly a decade. In 2010, the police received another tip about a possible location where Morgan could have been held, this time in a neighboring state. They went to search the area, but again, they found no evidence that the girl had ever been there. Interestingly, in 2017, the police returned to search the house again, but for a different reason. It turned out that a man who had lived there was convicted of a crime against a minor, and he was suspected in another similar case. However, once again, the police found no evidence linking him to Morgan's disappearance. In 2017, another documentary about the case was released. For the first time since Morgan's disappearance, the police publicly shared a grainy photo of a red pickup truck that was believed to have been involved in her abduction. The vehicle had briefly appeared on someone's camera during the filming of a local sports game, but due to the poor quality and angle, no critical details were visible. After the release of this documentary, the police reached out to the public, asking for any information about who might have owned the van. They received several new tips, but progress in the case remained elusive. This continued until 20, when investigators, for the first time since the investigation began, named their prime suspect. That person was a man named Billy Lynx. Billy had caught the attention of the police during the initial weeks of the search for Mark. He had a prior conviction for a crime involving a minor and owned a red pickup truck, similar to the one witnesses described. However, in 1995, authorities couldn't find any direct connection between him and the girl's disappearance, even after searching his truck. During questioning, Billy appeared truthful in his denial of involvement. Additionally, Billy was much older than 30 at the time, while detectives based their early suspicions on friends of Morgan's, who described the abductor as a younger man. Nearly 30 years later, detectives revisited his case, hoping that advancements in DNA technology would help find any traces of Morgan's in his vehicle. However, several challenges arose. Billy had passed away in 2000 while serving time for attempted kidnapping. Just 2 months after Morgan's disappeared, he had tried to lure another young girl into his car outside a store. Fortunately, the girl's mother scared him off and reported the incident to the police, leading to his arrest. At that time, Billy was already 70 years old, and he died of natural causes in prison 5 years later. Another challenge was that the police had no idea where Billy's pickup truck was, or if it had even survived nearly 30 years after the original investigation. Ultimately, they focused on tracking down the vehicle, and after some time, managed to trace a chain of ownership leading back to it. To the police's surprise, they were eventually able to locate the truck. It was still operational, and the current owner agreed to hand it over for forensic examination. Initially, detectives did not have high hopes, as any DNA evidence could have been easily wiped away or degraded over the years. However, forensic experts managed to find a few strands of hair in the truck's bed, resembling Morgan's hair. The hair samples were sent to a lab in Texas equipped with the latest DNA analysis technology, and the experts began their examination. It took 8 months, but eventually they made a breakthrough. The team extracted DNA from the hair and compared it to Morgan's mother's kidney. The results showed a close familial match, indicating that the hair belonged to either one of her children or a close sibling. The woman stated that she did not know Billy Lynx and had never met him in her life. Detectives also realized that none of Morgan's close relatives could have ended up in that truck, meaning the hair had to belong to the missing girl herself. In October 24, the police held a press conference to announce that Billy Lynx was now officially considered responsible for Morgan's abduction. They expressed no doubt about his involvement. Despite this, no one believes that Morgan's could still be alive after 29 years. Investigators suspect that Billy killed her within the first few days after the abduction, but the location of her body remains a mystery. Although the case is technically considered solved, police have announced that they will continue searching for the remains. However, without a confession from Billy, this task seems nearly impossible. Detectives are also investigating his potential involvement in other cases, given that he attempted at least a few kidnappings shortly after Morgan's disappearance. Authorities believe that Billy may be responsible for more heinous acts than initially suspected. At the time of Morgan's abduction, Billy was already 70 years old, and based on the evidence, he had significant experience committing similar crimes. In addition, he had served in the military during World War II, but there is no record of him having specialized military skills. In the coming months, detectives hope to link him to other unsolved cases. It's worth noting that Morgan's disappearance became one of the most infamous crimes in all of Arkansas. The authorities even renamed the Amber Alert system to the Morgan Alert to honor her memory. As for Morgan's mother, she continues to help other children and families through her nonprofit organization. This work has helped her cope with the loss of her daughter, although deep down, she still holds on to hope that Morgan might be found alive one day.